Hey y'all, it's Melissa here at Twin Oaks Family Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. In this video, just talking about how do we know whether or not our Cornish rock cross meat chickens need supplemental warmth from heat lamps. How do we know if they need the heat lamps turned on? How do we know if it's time to turn them off? And I have a great opportunity to give you a visual reference on that. So backstory is, it is May 8th, 2024. I have a flock of 124 Cornish rock cross meat birds in production. As I'm recording this, it's mid-morning, so we've already done morning chores several hours earlier. We had overnight ambient temperatures outdoors of approximately 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and we have a working knowledge of meat chickens that gives us a reference point that they probably, at this age, they're 16 days old, they probably want to be about 80 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature. So overnight temperatures were about 10 degrees cooler approximately than they want to be. So when we did morning chores, we had 12 heat lamps on 124 birds, and they were utilizing them, so we didn't turn them off. Now we're mid-morning, the day is warming up, I'm checking the barn. Let me show you what I'm seeing and tell you what I'm deciding based on evaluating what I'm seeing and what we're going to do with the ambient conditions in the building for them. So I'm going to turn the camera around, bear with me on that. This is, as the cameras turn around, you're getting the view of our meat bird production barn from the door that we use as basically the front door to it. This is on the west side of this building, and the building itself is 30 foot by 30 foot. It is designed specifically for finishing Cornish rock cross meat chickens in hot temperatures. So Cornish rock cross meat chickens don't tolerate heat very well, especially when they're close to processing day, close to the end of production for them. So we set this barn up with intention to make it where we can cool it down by just natural airflow and cross ventilation. So it's not airtight to start with because it's a rustic style of wood construction, and we wanted that great air exchange, so we positioned doors opposing each other on all four sides in order to be able to open up the whole building. Now, as we walk in closer to the chickens that we have in production, the first thing I want to notice is where are the birds, and that's how I'm evaluating temperature conditions in their pen. And basically, there are no birds in the middle directly under the heat lamps. Basically, I know there's a few stragglers that still are in that area, but for the most part, where are the birds, especially the groups of birds that are at rest, that are laying down, relaxing, or sleeping? You can see those birds are out to the outside of where those beams of light and warmth are hitting the flooring from the heat lamps. So we have 12 heat lamps installed, and the way we set them up is we basically make an aisle of warmth for the birds, because when they're chilly, they will gather around those heat lamps underneath them in order to absorb and feel the targeted warmth coming off of those heat bulbs so that they can warm up. But it's really important that they have enough space that if ambient conditions change and things around their pen warm up and therefore cause things inside their pen to warm up, they can get away from those hot spots as well. And that's what we've observed. The birds have moved away from there. So when we did morning chores, like a matter of maybe 3-4 hours prior to this being recorded, no birds wanted to be like out here. All the birds wanted to be under the heat lamps. So instead of using a thermometer or a thermostat to evaluate temperature, this is what we use. We evaluate where are our birds hanging out in their space and how comfortable do our birds look. So the birds all really do look comfortable. and they're generally, as a flock, as a whole, not utilizing these heat lamps. So there are some more birds under these heat lamps on this end, because it's further away from any moving air that could be cooling things down where the birds could be. But we also have some birds gathering down on that end. You see their sun coming in that doorway, so that attracts them, and they'll maybe hang out there as long as the sunlight's there. But for us in this building, by like midday, just after the noon hour, that sun won't be coming in that doorway anymore. So it'll make the ambient lighting more even. So basically, just a short story of this presentation in this video is we gave our birds the morning to let outdoor temperatures kind of warm up, knowing that would warm up temperatures inside here. We left all of the supplemental heat lamps on for them that had been on overnight, so that they could choose as the morning went on if they need to be under the heat lamps where the supplemental warmth is, or away from the heat lamps. And in general, now we can see that most of the birds have selected to leave the aisle of warmth to go out to a peripheral area where there's not heat lamps. In fact, we have like one here up on its side, basically cooling itself down. And even that one right there that has stayed under the heat lamps has moved to the outer part of where that warmth is hitting, and is also cooling itself down. And the reason I say they're cooling down is because they, were propped up, exposing the underbelly where it's not feathered, and letting air move across that unfeathered underbelly, which helps them cool down. So in general, though, we can just see that most of the birds are avoiding the heat lamps. So as I finish recording and turn off the camera, I'll have both my hands free. I'm going to actually go down through, and I'm going to unplug all the heat lamps, because we are in the high 70s Fahrenheit ambient temperature. So there's another one with its back to us that has been propped up so that it's keeping itself cool and comfortable. Okay. Now this is interesting. Right here, close to us, these two, the one closest to us is a hen. The one furthest from us is a rooster. So a little earlier than 16 days, we're kind of able to look at the birds and assess that. But there's a pair together, so you can kind of see that. It's really getting easier and easier from this point on to assess which is female, which is male, based on the comb and wattles. So the one in the back, the comb is getting more prominent and it's darker red. And also on the one in the back, you can't see that just a second, but the wattles are darker red and getting more prominent. And on the hens, the comb and wattles will stay more low profile. So there's that one. Exposing the unfeathered underbelly to stay comfortable, and preening. It was preening before I got the camera over there. So as I said, we'll unplug all the heat lamps when I get both my hands free. So that will let it cool down in this center aisle of their pen, and they'll use the pen more evenly then. We'll have a more even ambient temperature. So for us, our ambient temperature inside our building more or less matches the ambient temperature outside. So we have that temperature point, as a reference to know what it's generally feeling like in here. And then we can increase an area of warmth for them with the heat lamps. But when the outside temperature starts to get to where it's going to keep the birds comfortable, then we know it's a good opportunity to turn off the heat lamps, and we don't have to divert as much money to the utility company when we're able to turn those off. So heat lamps, it really is a cost-effective way and an efficient way to provide supplemental warmth to the birds. But when you're running multiples of them, it does feel like it adds up. So we do have 12 on this flock. as we get into summer here at Twin Oaks Family Farm, we will have flocks of 425 birds at a time, and we're going to utilize this very same kind of footprint and split those groups into two groups of just over 200. And so at that point, we'll actually have installed 24 heat lamps, 12 on each side, and be running 2 pens of these birds, same age, simultaneously. So anyway, so great opportunity for us to see that now, you know, high 70s approaching 80 degrees Fahrenheit is a temperature range that is comfortable for 16-day-old Cornish rock cross meat chickens. And we know that because in this barn that pretty much matches outdoor temperature, the birds are going toward the areas that are not being supplemented with warmth. And in general, as a flock, the birds are staying clear of the area where supplemental warmth is being targeted. So this area here in front of us where the heat lamps are is definitely exceeding 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And in general, they are not demonstrating that that's where they want to be. They're demonstrating that they're comfortable where there isn't supplemental warmth. So we use that behavior to gauge what our birds need for ambient temperature conditions.